Hey everybody, welcome to the Keeper of the Gains podcast. I'm your host, John Gallup, and today I have my guest, Nick Taylor. What's up, Nick?
How are you?
Doing well. So Nick Taylor is a 5-time Paralympic tennis medalist, an 11-time doubles world champ, and 11-time Grand Slam winner, including 7 U.S. Opens and 4 Australian Opens. He's also the professor of sports management at Wichita State University and the assistant tennis coach there as well. That's quite a list of achievements, Nick.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate, done a lot in my life.
Yeah, that's very impressive. So let's kind of talk about, everybody just heard me say Paralympic athlete. What disability do you have?
Okay, so my disability is called arthrogryposis. It's a fairly rare disability. I don't know really what the birth rate is, but I know it's extremely low. I know when I was growing up, I think there was only 2 others in the state of Kansas that had it. Now I've since then, found a lot more, but, technology changes things. I'm 39. So, back when I was a kid, there wasn't the internet and Facebook and all that, where it's so much easier to connect with people. But, so essentially, I was born with my disability. Many of the people that play wheelchair tennis and other wheelchair sports for that matter, do come from a background where they were able-bodied at one point and then they were injured. I am a birth defect. There's plenty of others that play wheelchair tennis that are birth defects as well, but it's probably less than 20% of us. So my disability, essentially, the easiest way to describe it is, and this is the way it's been described to me because I'm certainly not a doctor either, when you go down an able-bodied or any human body, we have motor carrier nerves that come out of our spinal column, and that's what make our muscles fire. So that's what makes your bicep fire, your quad in your leg, whatever you're wanting to fire, that's what makes it fire. If you go down my spinal column, it's not a perfect pattern, but it's pretty solid of a pattern that I have every other motor carrier nerve that actually works. So what that means is, many times on one side of a joint, I have a muscle that works, but on the other side of the joint, it doesn't, because like I said, it's every other. So the example, I can close my hand, but I can't open my hand. I can, I can push down with my arms, but I can't raise them up at all. So it's essentially every movement that an able-bodied person can make, I can sort of make half of them. If that half of those movements. So, and it's not a perfect pattern. When I say I can push down, I can, but it's not at the strength that you could, John, or, that anybody with perfectly normal arms could. So it's not even as if everything that works is at 100%, but it, I don't have any paralysis. I'm not a spinal cord injury. I can feel everywhere. I can physically move. I just can't always make them. I can't make everything move in the direction that that a normal person could. So, when I was born, I immediately started having surgeries and things like that. I think my father and I one time tried to count. We got to 35 surgeries and we just quit counting after that.
Oh man!
But that's the a number that I generally use as the number of surgeries I've had. Thousands of hours of physical therapy.
Yeah.
One thing I always do in the classes that I teach is I always, I ask about people what they want to do in the future. I do this thing where they come in and they do an interview with me, and anybody that says they want to be a physical therapist, I tell them we're not friends anymore and I don't want to talk to them. So I scare them, and then I laugh and I explain to them why. And in all honesty, I'm extremely thankful for all the physical therapy I went through, because I'm sure I wouldn't have been able to do what I have without it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I was a kid, there was a lot of pain and a lot of stretching and a lot of things I did not want to do. And when I was a kid, I didn't understand why.
Now, were they trying to get some of those motor units to fire, or were they trying to just teach you patterns of the ones that could fire to help you?
It was really a lot of the stretching that came from physical therapists. So what happens when you have a muscle on one side of a joint but not on the other? You form what's called a contracture. So my hands are a perfect example. As you can see, obviously the listeners can't see it, but my hands are hooked and they're basically in a fist, and I can't open them out of that fist. Well, that's because I have the I think it's the flexor muscle to be able to pull that hand closed. but I don't have the extender to be able to open it.
Right.
So the flexor over time, it gets stronger, and it has nothing pulling against it like your hand does.
Right.
And so it just pulls it tight. And so most of my joints, they don't. I'm pretty stuck in the position I'm in. My hips, even when I lay down, I don't, lay down in bed. I can't lay completely flat on my back, not even close, because my hips won't go straight.
Yeah.
My knees are the same way. My elbows are the same way. They don't. My elbows, the range of motion is extremely limited. Even in terms of what I can do with my elbow, it's almost nothing. But even if you were to come bend it like a physical therapist does, the range of motion, I think, is like 20 degrees. It's very little.
Yeah.
And that's just because those contractures have formed.
I can see why stretching right away was a very important thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's something that for a long time, I didn't do. And here in, the last 5 to 10 years, as I've started getting older, I've started realizing I need to start doing more of it, because I'm just becoming so rigid and so stuck in a position, and it's just not, it's making things harder for me.
Right.
So, and then as a result of all of this, of being, having arthrogryposis and the extreme limited range of motion, I have used a power wheelchair since I was 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I was a kid, I did a lot of scooting around on the ground and, flopping around and stuff like that. But I walked as a child, with these massive braces on, they basically went from my chest all the way down to my feet, and I was extremely strapped into them, and they basically held me upright. But it was something that was extremely painful.
Yeah.
Even just getting into the braces was extremely painful. They were really tight. They had to be, and everywhere that they would pinch and stuff like that. As a little kid, I hated that, and was very, very time consuming.
Yeah.
And so I think about the time I hit middle school, the physical therapist and my parents agreed that it was up to me whether I wanted to keep doing it, and I couldn't say no fast enough, because it hurt. It was painful. I felt like it's, I took a lot of time out of each day trying to do it. It was dicey. I could easily fall and then, break an arm or something. And I just realized that there was no way that it was ever going to become functional. It wasn't like I was going to just, get better and get out of the car and walk into the grocery store to get the milk instead of taking a wheelchair. That was never going to happen, just with where I was at. So I realized that at a young age, and just, it's, kind of the way I live is just, deal with what you've got and do the best you can, but don't, it was a waste of time trying to chase that. Oh, I want to walk. It just wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
So,
what was that like growing up in childhood? And like, at what point did you reach that conclusion? Like, this is the card I've been dealt, and I'm going to play my hand the best I got.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
It's not like I just all of a sudden had an epiphany and was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I think it was just the way I was brought up and everything. One of the stories I always tell when I give, I do public speaking as well on top of all that stuff you listed. And there's other stuff too.
Yeah.
One of the stories I tell is that I think is a really important story is that I was about 5 years old, and it was a summer morning, and I woke up, and my dad, I knew I was all excited because I knew I was going to get to go swimming, and at my age, that was the highlight. That was the best thing that could happen, was I get to go swimming, and I did it a lot, but I just loved doing it. Other than maybe going fishing, nothing else beat that. And my dad walked in the room and said, "Nick, you ready to go swimming?" And I said, "Yeah." And he took the swimming suit and he threw it to me and said, "Okay, well, when you get that on, we'll go swimming." And he turned around and he walked out of the room. And I didn't understand why. I was mad. I was upset. I cried. I screamed. I yelled. I kept calling for him to come help me, and he wouldn't come. And I'm sure when you think about it from a parent's perspective, that might not have been real easy on him either. But eventually I wiggled and wriggled and squirmed, and I got it on. And it's not even something now that I necessarily do on my own. I have to have help, even with stuff like that. But it was something that at the time, he wanted to show me that if I set my mind to it and I worked hard enough, I could do it.
Right.
And that, that story, I could tell thousands of those after that, from him, from teachers to coaches to, just random people that I meet that don't even know they did it.
Yeah.
That just challenged me on something. And that's a big part of my life is just, I like proving people wrong and doing what they say I can't do.
Yeah. Yeah, so that kind of set the stage. That, along with all the other influencers of your life, kind of brought you to who you are today, or helped form you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what was, when you're growing up, what made you decide to pursue sports, and then what got you into the sport of tennis?
So I had grown up, I loved watching sports on TV. I don't remember which games it would have been. I was born in '79, so I don't know which Olympic games. It might have been the '84 games,
Mm-hmm.
when I was a kid, or maybe '88. I don't know, and I don't even know if it was summer or winter. I don't have a distinct memory of it, but I remember I have always been just locked in during the Olympics. And I mean, the most recent one, I was up at 3 a.m. screaming at the television when the U.S. men won the curling, because I thought that was so cool, and I loved curling, and it was so cool that we did, that the U.S. did good. And 3 a.m. I scared the crap out of my dogs, my neighbors, everybody else, because I yelled when we finally won. I yelled so loud, and and that's just been that way my whole life. And I've just always, like I said, '84, '88, the first games I would have watched. I thought it was so cool that somebody got to be an athlete and represent their country, and it was something I dreamed of doing. At the time, I didn't know how I would do it. At that time, I didn't even know what the Paralympics were.
Yeah, it
was just something that I just thought was cool. So, I also grew up going to Wichita Wings games, which I don't know if you're old enough to know who the Wings are, but
and I wasn't raised here either.
Okay, so, you weren't raised here either, but the Wings were a professional indoor soccer team that were really big in the 80s and through the mid 90s before they folded. And I was a season ticket. My family was a season ticket holder. We went to every single game, and I absolutely loved them. That was the highlight. And then once the Thunder started in the mid 90s, I started going to all the Thunder games, and I still go to Thunder games.
I do know, after living here for a few years, that the Thunder is a pretty big deal in this area.
Yeah. So that was a big influencer, was going to all those games and just, watching sports on TV and such. And so I had, done a lot of things in recess and, PE class and different stuff like that. But what really what happened with tennis was that I was in high school, or in middle school. I was in 8th grade. I was getting ready to go into high school, and I just made the decision that I really, really wanted to play a sport for my high school. That really was important to me. And soccer was the first thought, because I, like I said, I grew up going to Wings games, and I played soccer every day with friends and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can use my legs good enough I can't kick a ball real hard, but I can control it extremely well. I can shoot baskets with my feet and make 3-pointers. Not consistently, but don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm shooting it, 50% from 3-point, but you give me 5 or 10 shots, I'm going to make a couple of them probably.
Yeah.
So, so that was the first option, but that turned out that it just wasn't really going to work, because it actually went to the state athletic director. We asked, and they just said no. And, at the time, right at the initial thought, I was really upset, and I was mad that they said no, that I couldn't play. But even at that age, the competitor in me, I started, looking at it from the other side, from the other perspective, and realizing that from a competitive point of view, how could I do that? That's what's a guy supposed to do?
Right.
Is he going to slide tackle a 300-pound piece of metal? You can't. And then,
I'd like to see someone try, though.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I looked at it from their point of view. Okay, the guy in the wheelchair's got the ball. We could walk up and take it from him.
Yeah.
But then we're the jerk if we do. So what do I do? Just let him go score a goal? So it just, that's something I've learned. Nothing to do with sports or anything, just with life. I've tried to